Great. Thanks, Sid, for making the time to chat today. It's always good to see you.
Pleasure.
Um, yeah, so as you know, but for everyone else, I was at GitLab for 5 years, and I'm now for the past 6 or 7 months been at a new startup called Project Discovery. And we are an open source security company or open source powered security company, focused mostly in the offensive security space. And we're really, in the very beginnings of our go-to-market strategy. We have this fantastic open source community and a lot of folks that use our products. And we've got all these different tools, and a lot of bug bounty hunters use it. A lot of enterprise red teams use the tooling. But we're also, of course, trying to build a sustainable business. And quite a few things about building sustainable commercial businesses around open source. So I'm interested to pick your brain about kind of our plans. Our current plan is maybe not the traditional Sid Sijbrandij open core, but I would call it kind of an open core approach. We have, like I said, our open source tooling. Nuclei is really the flagship of that as far as scanning goes. And then we've got lots of folks contributing templates that kind of dictate how Nuclei looks for vulnerabilities. And that all is remaining open source for now. And what we're building is a proprietary software product that's going to really be a SaaS. So the thing I didn't mention about the tools are mostly CLI based, right? They're kind of like you can go and run them in your CLI, and that's great. There's so many of them. There's 20 open source tools. And the reason there's so many of them is it's very much like the Unix philosophy of many sharp tools. So they're designed to be piped together. And when you find people using them today, a lot of people are doing that. They're building these pipelines of bringing the tools together. That would be like discover your assets, then scan them for vulnerabilities, right? That kind of pipeline. And so our thought, our go-to-market plan is going to be Project Discovery Cloud Platform. And what that's going to be is bringing together all those tools in a platform where folks can manage their assets, set up scheduled scans, be notified of new vulnerabilities, and then integrate that into their dev tooling. That's a surprisingly unsolved problem in the security and developer space, where communicating the security findings to the dev team is not always a solved problem. So we've got a lot of thoughts around that. And then hopefully, once you solve the problem, have those forever be tested. Once it's remediated, do regression testing, every day or whatever your schedule is like, so that you don't have recurrence. And so, again, that's something that I think people can and people have built various, scripts and things on their own to try and do that. But we think that, an enterprise would rather consume, a SaaS product and, probably one day a self-hosted product for some certain enterprises. That kind of just does that for them. And so that's kind of our proprietary code on top of the open source stuff. And yeah, I'm interested in what you think about that, what the holes are that you would poke in that strategy, and what you think.
Yeah. First of all, the naming Product Discovery Cloud Platform. I read on your website about Nuclei Cloud. Is that the same thing, or is that something else?
Good question. So world premiere, it's being renamed. It was named Nuclei Cloud. For various reasons, we've decided to rename it to Project Discovery Cloud Platform. So that's what it will be going live as. To be honest, that's inspired, probably pretty directly from HashiCorp, right? HashiCorp also has a large set of open source tools that it brings together in HashiCorp Cloud Platform. So we don't see ourselves as that unlike them. I mean, we're not competitive with them, right? They're in infrastructure management and we're in security scanning, but we've taken a lot of inspiration from them on that.
Cool. And you mentioned something about charging for helping customers integrating the tooling. What is that? Did I understand that?
Well, what I'm saying is the cloud platform is going to bring all these tools together. So again, the simplest example would be a tool of ours called SubFinder finds all your subdomains, and then Nuclei scans all those subdomains for known vulnerabilities, right? Today, you could, as a user with our MIT licensed tools, both of those are MIT licensed, build that yourself, right? Like build literally a bash script, right? To pipe those two together. We think that a platform that brings those together without you having to do all that wiring up yourself is going to be valuable to enterprises as step one. And then we think there's other value props on top of that for enterprise. But that's kind of like the crux of it.
Cool. Yeah, so you charge for the platform, and the platform consists of integration of all these various tools. That makes sense. In the beginning of your talk, I thought you were going to charge for SaaS, which I think is not a good strategy, to charge only for the hosted version, because someone else might launch the same hosted version, and plus a ton of big companies would like to self-host, and then you'd not have that market. But that's not the plan. The plan is to charge for the integration for the platform. The first way of delivering that is the SaaS version, but you might have a self-hosted version later on. So that makes sense. And then that integration can go, and in the beginning it's maybe stringing things together, but I could see that all the way going into governance and like proving things and compliance and comparison with the market and standards, enforcement, and everything else. So you got all that good juicy stuff that CISOs like to pay for, or that CISOs really want and are prepared to pay for. You got that kind of in the higher level platform code that is proprietary. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And yeah, I think that too, one thing, like, first of all, everyone is on board with this, but you know that I was not going to let us forget self-hosted as we're building. Like the first way we're going to deliver it is in the cloud, right? And learn how to scale it and all of that. But we know that there's going to be plenty of it's very sensitive data, right? I mean, what vulnerabilities might exist on your infrastructure. And so for that reason, a lot of large enterprises will want to self-host it. There's plenty of, disconnected enterprises that don't put that kind of stuff out on the internet that don't want to self-host it. So we probably also see kind of a hybrid model where, we've got these kind of scanning agents, right? And so folks may want us to host the platform, but then have scanning agents, inside of their VPC or something, right? So similar to the GitLab runner model of, you can have a GitLab runner that's inside of VPC, but can connect up to GitLab.com. So there's probably kind of at least those three modes eventually. And then, the other point you brought up was about compliance. Yeah, I think that kind of compliance and enforcement is definitely something that we have as top of mind. But I think we're intentionally not going after the compliance market first, because I think that's very saturated today. And when you talk to, modern security engineers, like if you talked to GitLab's red team, they discount a lot of those scanners that are very compliance focused as not valuable to actually securing the perimeter, right? Like they're like, oh yeah, we have to run these, these things because the auditors want it. There was a great tweet I saw that someone said that it was like, what do you want to protect against? Do you want to protect against an auditor or an attacker? So two different things. And so while we do think that like we'll be able to, help people with compliance eventually and be able to deliver that pretty easily, we're super focused on exploitable vulnerabilities and finding exploitable ones rather than just finding every vulnerability, right? There's lots of scanners out there that'll throw a critical error when it's like just a slight TLS mismatch, something that's not exploitable by an attacker at all, but an auditor wouldn't want to see. You have TLS 1.2 instead of 1.3 or whatever it is. And so the fact that our templates are community driven means that like that just doesn't happen for us, because people are focused on the criticality is focused on how exploitable is a vulnerability versus some other metric.
Yeah, that makes sense. If I look at, I think your offering would encompass both Nuclei Cloud and Chaos, I think you call it today. Both are request and invite today. And Nuclei Cloud launched like 6 months ago. That's a long time to be invite only. Any thoughts you can share?
I can share that it's not going to be much longer, but it has been. We've been working directly with a number of design partners in this kind of invite only phase to get a lot of really great feedback around around the kind of the buying pattern, right? And so I think, again, we've got this like fantastic open source technology. Our co-founders are great. CTO was a former HackerOne, and then the CEO and the other co-founders have all been security engineers, and so they've really been building tools that the users want, right? That the security engineers want. But again, you and I both know that there's a difference between a user and a buyer, and so I think we've really been spending that time understanding the buyer, and trying to figure out how we can make both happy, right? While not sacrificing the user for the buyer, right? Which again is something I know is near and dear to your heart. And so I think that's the work we've been doing the past couple months. And then at DEF CON, we're hoping to open it up a little bit more.
Cool.
That's coming soon.
You get a kind of, do you have to verify that the domains are yours? Because that would make it less useful, but otherwise you could use it to attack, do bad things that you'd be responsible for because it's running your infrastructure. How do you, but some things are okay to share, some things are not okay to share. How do you balance that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I mean, up until now, it's been very, very manual, right? We've had these very close relationships with the people using the platform. And so it's been a little easier to know that we're not doing that. But yeah, we have plans for verifying domain ownership. I think that's going to just be required. We also, again, over this past time, we've worked really closely with cloud partners to understand how we can, not do things that get you kicked off the internet, right? And so our main cloud partner is actually GCP. Again, you're very familiar with them, and they've been great in terms of us presenting to them, this is our plan for how we're going to verify and prevent abuse, and they've been great at kind of working with us back and forth on that. And this is all, I do think that we're still further off, even when we release this, and it's not invite only to enterprises and companies to purchase. I think we're still a ways off from individuals. I think we do want to have eventually our founders really believe in this democratized security mission, and so they want to be able to have a free tier eventually, and individual tier. But that obviously is going to present a lot of challenges that we need to solve around making sure folks aren't abusive of it. And so we're not necessarily doing that. That's not in the short-term roadmap. And we're trying to be honest about that, right? Like if you look at our blog post announcing Nuclei Cloud, now Project Discovery Cloud Platform, we say like enterprise security engineers are the first folks that we're looking to please.
Makes a ton of sense. I think it's very tempting to almost start with the free tier because you get this influx of users and you feel the graph goes up and to the right. But it's almost better it makes a ton of sense to start with the buyers and then kind of work your way back. We're starting not with the buyers, but with the paid plans, and then do free.
Yeah, I think that's our plan, and we'll learn, what it looks like at scale, and then we'll also be able to price that better and know what free, be able to understand that funnel a lot better too when we go to release that.
Cool.
Speaking of funnels, did I tell you? And she actually told me to say hi, that I have the pleasure of working with Emily Kyle again. She's running marketing for us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Really exciting. Yeah, I will. It's great to have another GitLabber in the room in the executive meetings and be able to kind of we're trying to bring as much of the culture as we can, because we've got folks all over. The CEO, CTO are in India, so we're trying to teach the asynchronous ways slowly but surely.
Cool.
Do you have any opinion about, I know you have opinions. What is your opinion on like the kind of licensing model I've discussed so far, and the fact that, we're fully MIT, the tooling, right? Like I made allusions to HashiCorp, although it's interesting, HashiCorp has, the MPL license. I guess if it was you, what would you think about our open source licensing versus the proprietary plan versus, like, would you change anything about any of that?
I think the proprietary part should be this part you charge for. That seems to be the case. You're charging for the integration in the platform, and that's the part that will have a proprietary license. I don't think it's a problem, but one thing I see a lot is that people try to keep it super clean, like this complete repo is proprietary and this complete repo is MIT. And I think that a lot of time, if you're disciplined about kind of, if buyers care more, if managers and directors and executives care more about a feature should be paid, sometimes that feature is in that other repo. And I think with GitLab, we use the EE subdirectory and everything else to clearly distinguish it. In your case, it's so clean that causes me to evaluate it again. Like, is this the right thing, or did you just pick it because it was such a clean technological solution? But I can't find any fault with it. But that's something I think to stay on top of. You might introduce features to the repos of, for example, Nuclei that are really more wanted by executives than individual contributors, and that should be proprietary.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think it's easier at, our current size and scale, and having a product basically not exist and willing it into existence, to be like, oh, it's so easy, it's so clean. But that could get messy, you're right. Like, and it could get messy quickly if you're not careful. If it's one feature request and you're like reconsidering that whole thing. Yeah, that's a good point.
And then one other consideration is maybe part of the platform or the integrations should be open source. Now you're a very different tool than, it's a tool, I think it's made by Portswagger or something like that. The IDE for hackers.
Yeah, Burp Suite.
Burp Suite. I think Burp Suite shows that it's super useful to have like a UI and a UX, and to just be able to click around to do these things. That's what your platform will offer. So maybe there should be an open source aspect to that as well.
Yeah. Or
maybe it's all proprietary, but you just give out free licenses for self-managed if you're using it as an individual or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I definitely, that's a good point, and something I think we've talked about and probably need to continue to think about. Because again, you of course have to balance the, like, wanting people to understand the value with not, giving away the whole farm, if you will, and making them want to come and pay you money eventually for the right things, right? And so yeah, we've been like, there's some tooling that's in the cloud platform that I think probably makes sense for individuals to have access to. And so yeah, I think we're still working through that. I don't think we have a plan, to be honest, there yet, but it's something that it's a good point that we need to continue to think about.
Yeah, and one way to structure that, although we're not doing that ourselves to that extent, but say, look, if you're less than 5 users, it's just
right.
Free.
Yeah.
The problem is a bit that I think your tooling allows people to spin up multiple instances without really suffering from the fact that they can't collaborate with a ton of people. It's a bit less. We make collaboration software that this has some collaboration aspects, but it's less collaboration software. So you might find that people just spin up 10 different instances and then have 4 or 5 people.
And that's not a big deal. User limits and security get really interesting, right? Because it's like, well, I can scan the whole company as one user, right?
Exactly. That might not work.
I mean, we're again pricing and modeling that could be a whole other discussion, but we're thinking about there's many security scanning companies today that price kind of based off the asset, being an asset being like, I mean, the thing is they've been around long enough that an asset meant like a server, right? And they've tried to adapt that meaning to say it's a subdomain, right? But then that doesn't even really make sense to a lot of people. Some people have one subdomain, GitLab's not it, but app.gitlab.com, right? And then that's it.
Subdomains don't make sense. Servers or containers or something that might make sense.
We're thinking about like a by scan pricing. Now that might be harder for folks to consume, so we're also thinking about that, like how did that get packaged right? But really we're saying, does the thing that matter is like one scan being like this template run against this asset? That pairing is what I care about, because I want to know that none of my assets are vulnerable to this vulnerability, right? Anyway, that's something we've been playing with. We've definitely run into folks that have lots of problems with the existing pricing models that exist for scanners out there, for sure.
Yeah, it's super hard, but charging per server scan might be, it's complex, but I could see that being a defensible thing, like number of servers times number of scans you did.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that costs us, right? Like it then also directly ties to our costs, which again, we're not the most worried about, being as early as we are, but it would then scale with the cost, right? Because that's the compute that we're doing.
Yeah, and then you don't have these subset of customers that cost you a lot of money, and you don't make enough on them.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if you go all the way to extreme value pricing, what would you do? And then like thinking, you'd force the customer to have a good bug bounty program, and then they pay for stuff for how much you already identified before it got hacked by hackers or something like that. But don't do this. This is way too complicated. But try to.
No, it's like that is like a value prop, but it's like, I think it's hard to figure out how to charge in a meaningful way for that. But I think you're hitting a nail on the head of where a lot of folks see value. Although again, the value isn't necessarily dollar for dollar. Oh, we didn't have to pay X dollars in bounties. It's like, it's bigger than that, but that is like the direct monetary.
Yeah, and it's for sure bigger than that. And I think a lot of people underpay in bug bounties because their limit isn't like what's a bug worth, but like how much can they handle as a security team, and they just at a certain point so many bugs getting in that they don't need anymore. They want to
exactly. Yeah, no, I've definitely found that to be true, because I've kind of, that's had one of the ways that I really tried to get myself up to speed on our tooling was like I joined HackerOne and BugCrowd, and I've been like building, and I did a subdomain takeover, and I've done a little bit of hacking here and there, and it's surprising how little to nothing a large Fortune 500 company will actually pay a bug bounty hunter.
I'm just so amazed by that. Intuitively, I think that 10% of the security budget should go there, and I don't understand why it's not for most companies. And I think the reason is they're so insecure that just with a little bug bounty, they already overwhelmed their teams in resolving.
I think you're right. And so a lot of, a lot of folks you end up with, I say it's very much like the old IBM days. I don't know if you familiar with like the old adage of like no one gets fired for buying an IBM.
Yeah.
It's like, so like CISOs, there's scanners on the market that they buy, like no one gets fired for buying those scanners, and like the compliance checkboxes are done. So like, see you later. But in reality, there's a lot of things that they're vulnerable to.
Yeah, there's a weirdness in the market that there's a lot of paper security, and I think there's certification programs that are like super useful. But if I could choose only one, like a company with a really compliant certification program and a company with $100,000 for a critical bug bounty program, I know which company I think is more secure.
Yeah. Oh, totally agree. Totally agree.
Cool. Anything else?
Anything else you're thinking about? I'm always, I miss the being in Slack all the time and seeing the like SID stream of consciousness on like cool new, like what's got your eyes just in tech in general these days. Is there anything that you're really thinking about or digging into?
I think obviously following all the AI news closely and focus on that as a company.
Yep.
I think that open core is a superior development model. And not just because you have part of it open source, but also the source available. Like even the proprietary part is something you can view, modify, contribute to. I think that's super powerful. And then the stream of consciousness, I'm starting a project called Incentive Design. There's some text on incentivedesign.org. Link it in the chat, and I want to start a new academic field that focuses directly on designing the incentives right, especially if there's kind of multiple parties involved.
Very interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting because that's something that I think we're as humans not very good at all. So that's interesting. I'm definitely gonna take a look at that. See, I knew there had to be I knew there was something like that I hadn't seen yet. I knew there was something cooking around.
Good talking to you, Brandon.
Yeah, good to see you.